Welcome to chess, except someone has added some pay-to-win pieces into it. So this is 50 cursed things about pay-to-win chess. 1. The developer does crypto scams and posts a cult leader ARG on Facebook. Okay, wait, let's not start with that one. 2. Pawn promotes to bishop. It's actually a different unit that promotes to queen. There's no en passant either, but that kind of makes sense because the description would get so long, like right now. 3. Bishop's upgrades gain teleport for some reason. What a pure game design. 4. Rook's final upgrade gets swapped for some reason. This unit is so unpopular, it only has 24 uses over 40 years. 5. The knight faces right, unlike every other chess site. Seriously. Also, it looks like a bishop wearing a horse mask. 7. Can you spot the difference between these two pawns and these two pawns? Well, don't bother, because there's no visual difference. Except these can move 2 spaces, and these can only move 1. But how is that possible when they're both on the same minion line? Well, this is because the unit's starting position can change, and it causes visual ambiguity. To be more precise, starting position is not changing, but you can lose track of it easily. What happened to these two pawns was that a grand wizard came and swapped them around. This problem has already been fixed in New Chess Battle Advanced. 8. The developer cannot consistently log dates. If you look through the updates, you'll see that some of the months are abbreviated, some are not, and sometimes the dot disappears. The version number also suffers from similar fates. 9. The way castling is worded and implemented is terrible. Swap places with allied champion, then move the king and champion together and lose this ability. First of all, in classic chess, there's a lot of rules that prevent the castle from being an all-in-one defensive ability that lets the king move way too far, which this game completely ignores. But maybe the most insulting is that the castle that is the long castle doesn't move you 2 spaces like in normal chess. It instead moves 3 spaces, which is both confusing and makes the game even more defensive for basically no reason. Also, it's a reason some people may rage quit the game forever.
No. How did I...
10. Vertical castling exists. White is literally about to get a fair checkmate on me. The king has nowhere to go, except... It's so terrible. 11. Displacement immune is a joke. Some units, like this one, have displacement immune, which means that, for example, there are some units that can teleport other units, but a displacement unit cannot displace a displacement immune unit, or swap with it. As you can see, this is capable of swapping with anything else. So why the hell is it possible for the king to castle with the displacement immune unit? 12. You can have 2 kings. Seriously, what the hell, spaghetti monster? Okay, this is fractally cursed because only 2 people have 2 kings as far as I know. Sometimes the developers gives people 2 kings as a reward for memes, but there's a rumor there's an army building bug that can also give 2 kings. Also, be glad that both players who have the 2 kings are meme players and not, like, competitive players, because I genuinely think 2 kings is just overpowered and everyone would use it if it were available to all players. But wait, 13. It is actually possible to get 2 kings in a real match. There's a piece that allows you to copy an enemy piece, which is also confusingly worded for some reason. What is type supposed to mean here? But actually, this is more confusing because there are some units, like this one, which has a magic ability to teleport an ally king to an empty location. What is it supposed to do when there's more than 1 king? Like, which king does it teleport? Oh yeah, sorry. It teleported the 3rd king that was off screen, sorry. To be honest, there's some scan order shenanigans that make it basically impossible to know which king you're about to teleport in 1,000 years. Also, that's not even the only unit with a confusing ability that targets an enemy king. 14. What is a champion exactly anyway? If you look down here, you have like champion listed as the type, but the king is not a minion or champion. So why is it possible to castle 2 kings with each other? Okay, to be fully clear, that doesn't work in the current version of the game. However, the difference between champion and minion and other and minion kinda definitely puts it in the cursed category. Also, the spaghetti monster, which is the developer of the game, named the minion kinda category. 15. Endless beta teaser for King+++. The spaghetti monster has been teasing the idea of king upgrades, which are currently not in the game, but they will also be branching paths of king upgrades. We have been getting beta teasers for this for like a decade. 16. The old versions of this game are hilarious in hindsight. I've already made a video on like a dozen of the worst balancing disasters, but I didn't get every ridiculous moment. There are also some ancient pictures with also ridiculous commentary. like calling this a devastating move by black, but there's actually no threats. Or this picture, which is supposed to show synchronization of an attack and how this rook is attacking this king, while this poison mage is also threatening to poison this rook. Except this screenshot makes no sense either, because this freaking rook can just take this other one. 17. Samurai promotes to ninja, right? That makes sense. Well, except for the part where it used to promote to rook for some freaking reason. 19. Samurai has the most dishonorable behavior. For this, we actually have to look into a real match and describe some game mechanics. So the king, on death, lose 25 morale. And notice in this situation, white has more than 25 morale. So if a piece tries to take the king, it's not over for white. And in fact, there's a piece called the prince that can effectively revive because the on kill transforms into king and gain 20 morale. So 25 is an important number. If white didn't have 25 morale, the queen could just like take the king and then like white's already lost and out of morale, so it can't take the queen back. So it's almost like this ability shuts off when you have 25 morale or less. Now, what does this have to do with Samurai? Well, it's because Samurai has an auto attack. Instantly attack this target at the start of your turn, and it attacks that in front of it. Which means that in late game, the Samurai is actually better than the Prince. Because just look at this. Put the king in front of the Samurai, the queen takes it, and it's actually a draw, with both white and black at 0 morale. How are you supposed to know that after white drops to 0 morale, the game then does a processing check for the start of white's turn? And like, it would also be natural to think that the game end check would happen between turns. Inevitably, this behavior would cause uproar in a tournament. 20. How did Samurai do this? So we have this unit, which is a comet, which is going to, well, it's supposed to freeze any enemy champion for 3 turns, and the surrounding units. But in this match, and this is partially Samurai's fault, something really weird happens. This is a unit called the Moonfox that also revives behind it once it dies. And look at this comet right now. Why is it targeting the Samurai? It's like the comet doesn't realize that the units have died. Brian 4 IQ. 21. Aquarius is completely broken. For this, you need to know the Aquarius, which is a unit where adjacent enemy units are frozen for 1 turn and pushed away 1 space. So this match looks pretty normal until eventually the Aquarius goes here. And now we have a Pyromancer. This has a magic destroy target. So when it kills the Aquarius, the Pyromancer should be pushed to the left, right? And be frozen for 1 turn. Well, what actually happens is the Pyromancer is here, but it's also here. When I click this space, it selects the Pyromancer, but also when I click this space, it selects the Pyromancer. How's this bug still here? And so it's like, what the hell is going on? Not to mention, it ruins the replay as well. And so the replay doesn't make any sense. Why does there still seem to be a Pyromancer on the board? And then when you reset, the board glitches out. And and now there's transparent copies of all the units for some reason. And we can replay the bug again. And we can exit as well. Oh god. What happened? Yeah, this game's bugged as hell. 23. Sometimes the spaghetti monster just loves to overcomplicate things. This didn't used to have the move or the attacker this passive, so now it's a common unit with way too much crap going on with this flavor text doesn't deserve 3 lines. We also have a toad that can only go 1 direction in a chain, and doesn't mention the most important part, which is that the toad can't attack if it would be blocked by a unit behind. Otherwise, it could just leap past it. But by far the worst is legendary unit Taurus, which is basically a less good melee ability. There's this giant wall of text that does not help you visualize at all. The official inventor of Chess Battle Advanced, Stratshot Player, has provided an alternative possible description, much like other people. Here is my proposal. It's like 3 lines less. Freaking wall of text monster. 24. What is Taurus even doing in this game? So for this, we're actually going to start off discussing how transparent units work, which have the ability does not block movement, which is supposed to mean that stuff like rooks and queens and bishops can attack or move through it. But it gets weird when it comes to wind units. So let's say that I push this. This is pushing up to 3 spaces away, so it pushes 3 spaces into there. That makes sense. Now, if there's a ghost in the way, should it block the movement? If no, it should go there as normal. If not, it should go there. And the behavior is that it does count as solid for the purposes of wind. And Taurus is also a pushing ability, so it kind of makes sense that it would also follow the same thing, where it gets blocked by the ghost. And somehow Taurus manages to cause maximum confusion with the Wisp, which reflects any ability to attack its use on its unit. So this Wisp causes a million bugs on its own, but usually the behavior in gameplay with Wisp is that you just can't attack it, otherwise the attacking unit also dies. But Taurus versus Wisp creates some of the most strange looking interactions that kind of makes sense, that Taurus does its action, then Wisp does its action back in the opposite direction. It's just also weird because transparent units can be in the way, and that makes things even more confusing as to what will even happen or how it ends up. And sometimes that can actually cause the Wisp to die, but not the Taurus. And Taurus is like one of the only units that can effectively melee attack a Wisp without dying. The transparent unit in the way behavior also causes situations like this where it can't castle because the transparent unit is in the way, can't castle here, but then this can castle. And also the Wisp just sometimes doesn't work on all the units, like it didn't go castle in the other direction. Wisp is weird. Why did I title this Taurus? 25. Path. No, seriously, like, everything about path abilities confuses new players constantly, and it's not helped by an idle piece with path not being obvious. If you're on like the opponent's side and you're trying to hover over an enemy's path piece, this does not give you much explanation. The best way to describe it is that, like, we have the normal diagonals of this piece, which is basically like a short bishop, but also the path abilities connect to this move square, and we have diagonals coming out from here and here as well, but it's a blockable path. It's just slightly crooked, and so from here, we also have a diagonal line there, and from here, we also have a diagonal going here. So for example, this archbishop is currently not attacking the knight because it's blocked, but if I move this pawn away, you can see the game is even highlighting the line that the archbishop is using to attack that knight. And so the splash lines really help here. I think the funniest part, though, is the spaghetti monster. Imagine coding path move types to handle spirals and branching and bizarre teleport emission patterns, only to find that people think the simple version is already too complicated. Now, this would never happen in a real game, but there's a unit here called Gluttony that can take entire enemy movesets. And this is like the only way to see some of that cursed path code. So, you can steal an archbishop, steal a Taurus, use the Taurus wisp curseness, as we said before. And now we have this abomination that has path moves that are connected to a teleport, which means that as long as that teleport square is empty, the path move is valid. So that allows for some of the dumbest, longest range attacks you will ever see. Like, what is this line? What is this? And also, check. If you don't block it properly, that king is available for the taking. 26. Inept Dark Mode. This game has the least effectual dark mode ever. The most important part of the game is still all white, and the things that aren't white gain this horrible outline to them that also makes it blurry to read on light mode. 27. Undefined. This Gemini thing summons a Gemini twin. When you split it, the text box says Champion Undefined Legendary. I reported this bug to the spaghetti monster like 8 years ago. 28. JSON code in my piece descriptions. Rather than having hover that allows you to see a unit by just hovering over it, you have freaking code with curly brackets and colons just pasted to the player to see. Not like they would understand what hatch 14 is without first knowing Phoenix Egg. 29. The most unnecessary button ever made. When you're watching a replay, this thing is on the top right, and you can have this alpha button. None of this info is real. Like, it's just debug information. You can't even call it that, it's placeholder stuff. There's no reason to even click this button, because none of the stuff behind it is actually updated. And some absolute fool couldn't figure out a way out of pressing the alpha button. And also, apparently the button is to play against the AI. But, like, The game is already over. How do you play against the AI? Also, just click the button. Just click the button. The AI buttons are down here. 30. The worst draft mode ever conceived. There's a draft mode in the Steam screenshots of this game, which could only be described as clickbait because it's not player versus player, it's just versus an AI. The thing is, the target audience for this draft mode is like two highly competitive people, the kinds of people who would legitimately enjoy a 6-hour army building stream. The reason regular drafts work like just open a bunch of boxes and maybe pass around the contents of the boxes and then make armies with that collection is the usual way a draft goes, is that it's much faster than this freaking nonsense. First you ban 3 pieces, which is already a process that takes a while. God knows the timer because you have to do so many actions. But you have a selection of minions and champions, and you take turns drafting the positions of them in your army one by one. And this already is going to take like a freaking hour. It's sad because I'm actually excited by the prospect of draft mode in an old Chess Battle Advance like game, but like this has literally been like forgotten about for years because of everything. Anyway, 31. Name Gen System. So if you click this button, you can generate random names for some reason. I'm pretty sure that you can generate a swear word if you click these enough times. 32. The Unblockable Retcon. This is an armored unit, which means that adjacent, in this case squares, that the enemy is attacking from, instead knocks the armor off. And then it's back to your turn. However, the unblockable keyword is allowed to pierce the block ability, which is basically a dumb meme bit of wordplay that became officialized, because after all, unblockable is primarily supposed to be that it can jump over things, not that it nuances armor. And this is a retcon because originally unblockable did not work this way, and the spaghetti monster tried to pretend this wordplay was a bug fix instead of a design change. 33 is the record number of kills in a single turn. This is completely insane with like a chain kill that happens, a lot of flashing location effects that kill units, the fireballs that get destroyed by freeze, and samurais auto-attacking into wisp that also retaliates. As a bonus, the freaking Wrath and Samurai gets stuck on screen because that's very nice. 34. Chaos Portal. This is a very rare unit that can sometimes be found in challenges. It's not a real PvP unit, but it has the most insane abilities, including polymorphing a target to be a random minion, and this mass teleport ability that makes a mess out of absolutely everything. 35. Envy Dove no longer summons Satan. Well, that's literally what the patch note says. So this involved Envy, which could transform into another enemy unit, but this actually counts as a death. And so this unit called Dove moves forward 1 space when an enemy dies. Trust me, it's also cursed that it somehow counts as a death when it's a transformation. But anyway, this used to have a bug when you targeted the Dove, which is the thing that moves forward. Because in that old version, it would instead target an empty space. And let's just look at the Spaghetti Monster's explanation here. Envy transformed into an invisible unit with no ID. It could move around and attack like normal, but anything that tried to attack it would instantly die or become undefined. What spaghetti code did you have to make this happen? That's basically the explanation right there. 36. What is a death anyway? Someone made a mini trivia question tournament about whether you can guess if a list of death effects actually triggers when Soulkeeper transforms an enemy into a ghost. So if you look on the bottom left here, it says, augmented, teleport to the empty location of any fallen ally. So normally, if you just take that pawn, like the completely normal attack, the Ghast will be able to teleport to that location. But does that work if you transform the pawn instead? Does that count as a death? In this case, the answer is yes, the Ghast can teleport there. You'll see this is not consistent. Next is Lifestone, which is able to revive a dead champion. But again, does it work when it's transformed? The answer is no. Next is Temperance, where it loses 1 value if an ally dies. Now, does this activate when an enemy transform happens? Yeah, it does. Next we have Wrath. When an adjacent ally is killed by an enemy unit, it casts lightning on the location of the enemy king. So, what happens is if a unit is taken there, this gets thunder. There's a location effect, meaning this square. If any unit is on it, it dies in 4 turns. And does this activate? No, it doesn't. Angel. On death, all ally minions become enchanted. Does this trigger? Yeah, yes it does. The dove has two effects. On enemy death, moves forward 1 space, and also on death, adjacent allied champions become enchanted. Does this trigger? Yes, yes it does. Militia, on death, lose 4 morale. So it involves black's number at the top. So, does this trigger? Yes, it does trigger. It lost a lot more morale than just 1. However, I bet you'll love this. Pride. On death, ally king gains half of pride's value. So it should gain 3 value. And pride has a value of 6. So losing the pride, normally you would lose just 3 morale because you would gain 3 morale after it dies. Does this work? No, chess battle advanced. Very consistent spaghetti monster. Aquarius Comet on death freeze. So the Aquarius pushes and freezes enemy units that are adjacent to it when it dies. So something like that normally, but does it work when transformed? No, no it doesn't. I strive to be this consistent in my video games. I'd also just like to highlight this bit of cursedness, where an envy can copy a temperance, which is the thing that, it has the on-ally death, but basically it counts for its own death. So this thing is now value 9, and this is value 10. And the reason this is lower is because it basically counted its own death. And the same thing works with Lifestone. So this thing counted Lifestone's death, which is not immediately obvious. Something feels especially cursed about how this interaction means that this temperance can attack the enemy temperance because it's 9 value, but because it has the restriction that it can't attack enemies of lesser value than itself, the enemy temperance cannot attack back. It just feels so wrong. 37. Threat squares are poorly executed. So blue and red squares appear on the board to represent what squares your pieces are attacking, as well as what pieces the enemy is attacking and defending, but really they're the same concept. But the size of the squares are terrible and completely unreliable. Like, for some reason, this square is defended and attacked by 1 piece. This is attacking it and this is defending it. So it should be equal, but it's not, and it looks like red has an advantage. It looks like red has an advantage in every single one of these threat squares where blue and red stack, which makes it so useless for comparison. And that's not even getting to the size when freaking magic and stuff is involved, where there's like random custom sizing. This is of course dealt with way better in New Chess Battle Advance, where squares that have equal amount of attackers and defenders look perfectly overlapped, and if there are more defenders, the color team who is winning will encircle the other color. For example, this one where the blue is around the red. Threat squares are still occasionally hotly debated, because they don't provide enough information sometimes, in ways that can be effectively noob traps. So some people have just disabled them outright, call them a crutch, just because stupid situations frequently happen with them. 38. Lust is ranged. So here's Lust, which has an ability to pull a target 1 space in the direction of Lust at the end of your opponent's turn. And this is a magic ability, supposedly. And like what it does is basically this, and it pulls the units. The reason it doesn't quite act like a magic ability is because you can block it. And there's not even a threat square on that location. Like, you naturally can't pull anyway if there's a piece blocking the way, which makes this, like, indistinguishable from a ranged ability. The ranged keyword is basically already blockable magic. Something else that really powers this conspiracy theory is the Frost Method. To keep it short, the thing this does is that anything that targets the Frost Method gets frozen for a turn. So if I do this, then black spends a turn. That Lust will get frozen, but of course that doesn't happen if it's blocked. Another thing that suggests there's something suspicious going on. This is an anti-mage, which has immunity, and yet for some reason there's a threat square on it. Just why? Game broken. 39. Lust ambiguity. So the Lust, this one can pull this one, and this Lust can pull this tile. So 2 Lusts are pointing at this square. So if I put a pawn here, which isn't even gonna move, lol, whatever I want. You gotta love how the other one also animates as if it does something. We have still not yet mastered how this works. Please help. There's an in-game tip that says it's bottom to top, left to right, from white's perspective, meaning that it acts different, relatively speaking, when you're playing black. Actually, we should update this to say Guardian ambiguity, because there are units with a special defensive ability to swap instantly if the targeted piece is attacked. So for example, if I take this, the shieldsman swaps and gets taken instead. But what happens when multiple pieces are capable of defending? Like, this piece is capable of defending the queen too. Well, this is another ambiguity in the same way, but at least there's a special effect that shows which is the one that's actually going to defend it. So you can tell that it's still the shieldsman here. The problem is sometimes it's not enough. For example, this leveled guardian is completely symmetrical with that ability, which means that a guardian that's defending another guardian will have two-way connection. So now we have visual ambiguity on top of the mechanical ambiguity. And that can be important in some situations. Like, this is a poison guardian, and maybe black would really like to know, if it attacks this guardian, will it be the poison guardian that swaps or the non-poison guardian that swaps, as both of them could swap, but the two-way visual effect makes it impossible to tell which one. Chess battle advanced. And of course, there's also ambiguity with doves. Remember that these things move forward one when an enemy dies. And you can have multiple doves move forward because 2 units can die in the same turn. Meaning there's ambiguity if the doves are trying to move into the same space, so very nice spaghetti there. 40, Status immunity spaghetti. Some units can do status effects, which makes sense. For example, poison, which destroys the enemy in 3 turns. But you can't re-poison the same unit. You also can't poison status immune units. Like, you don't have the option to do that. And that makes sense in a way, because it can prevent some really contrived misclicks. One of which, Dux Wang, is when making a move would be a bad idea. For example, the king would not want to move in any of these spaces where pawns are. This thing can't move except to poison. But now that it is poisoned, you can't re-poison it to avoid moving, so white's only valid move now is to intentionally sacrifice the king, which is not good. Of course, the situation is really freaking rare in this game. But there's an even worse one. Since there's no stalemate, you can end up with literally 0 moves left. If this happened in a real game, and white didn't have any moves, white would literally have to just run down the timer. I swear the spaghetti monster put some code that allowed it to just skip your turn, or to auto-lose the game, but for some reason I don't think that's actually in the game. So fantastic stalemate behavior, spaghetti monster. Really nice. Null guardian spaghetti also allows you to null the same piece multiple times. And technically this is similar, right? Because you can clearly null a piece multiple times if this happens, but you can't actually null the piece directly. It needs to use that guardian swap. And there are rare situations where you might like to re-null another unit that you've already nulled. 41. More status immunity hey, isn't this the same topic still? So this involves the status immune passive. There's a lot of effects in the game like poison, you can see here, freeze, petrify, and even compel that are status effects. And of course, they prevent any targeting with it. So why is it that enchantment works on it? It even has the status UI. Well, you might think, oh, enchant is some different word. But no, there's a piece called Alchemist that outright calls a distinction between positive and negative status effects. So it's weird that enchant isn't just considered a positive status effect. But okay, let's say that form spaghetti is reasonable, but then Spaghetti Monster added the Null Mage, which sets an enemy to no longer block movement and their value becomes 0. That's not considered a status. And then Void Mage in the same update, also a thing that affects the enemy by removing their moveset and turning into moves and teleports. And that's not considered a status either. It also can't be cured. Speaking of which, Null's description just lies to you. Null says their value becomes 0. But it doesn't mention that it locks the value to 0. It's a stealth change. You would only notice if you've actually been there when the update happened. But this affects things like Phoenix Egg, in which the value of this increases by 1 if the unit is not afflicted by any negative status ailment. And no, this doesn't help. This, considering, again, Null and Void don't count as negative statuses, apparently. So when you do this, it's value 0 and it stays value 0 despite playing the animation. And just to show the Void Mage interaction, obviously it still grows despite Void Mage arguably being negative. Although funnily it's positive in this case, since the Void Mage gives this thing value. In fact, let's make this a 2-for-1 special where the butterfly description also lies to you. So this butterfly has a big wall of text, and you don't need to care about it other than that it says unstoppable instead of unblockable or magic, and it can destroy an enemy unit with its location effect. However, despite it saying that it's unstoppable, you can clearly stop it if you just put an anti-mage on it, because the butterfly actually counts as magic as well, and anti-mage is immune to magic, even though nowhere on that freaking description does it say it's a magic ability. Nice scam. What the unstoppable ability actually does, and for sure this is a contrived pretend term, is that usually when pieces are petrified and unable to act, of course this vampire can't attack or move, and the same if the piece was frozen, it can still use the unstoppable ability. So that's all it means, that it ignores these freaking status effects. Very contrived. Butterfly. 43. Location effects and butterflies. There's currently 3 location effects in the game. Thunder Mage, where after 4 turns the unit in the marked location is destroyed. Fire Mage, where after 6 turns that unit is destroyed and adjacent units are pushed away. And finally, Wall of Text Butterfly, which can either kill an enemy, enchant an ally, or resummon the butterfly. Now the spaghetti here is note the half-turn timers. I casted all those abilities white. I also moved the king on every move, like how in a real game the turns would alternate. But yeah, the butterfly is on a different half-turn timer than the other two, and there's no description that mentions this is a thing. You just have to freaking know it. And for the record, it's more powerful if the butterfly is this way, because it can sync enchant, it can sync up attacks in ways the other 2 locations cannot. But it's mentioned nowhere. Location effects are also spaghetti with stacking. You can't stack another butterfly on another butterfly. In fact, I questioned the spaghetti monster already using up 3 of the 4 corners because these effects kind of overlap. All of them can destroy enemy unit after the turn timer ends. Also, there's a different unit called Wrath that says cast lightning and doesn't mention whether you will pay 1 for casting, which is a reasonable thing to think, but also no one cares. 44. Enchant description disaster. So we have an enchantress. This has a wall of text description and is a legendary unit. So I guess it's justified that it has such a long description, right? The base effect is easy to understand, it's just making it immune. But it also can't keep the effect if it attacks, and it can't target the enemy king, which are both pretty reasonable. But here's the problem. Spaghetti Monster would then go and put enchant in others' pieces without any way to know that they also had those caveats to them. This dove might have had it absolutely the worst because it's rare, which is much easier for a noob to encounter this piece. And it promotes the legendary angel, which also mentions enchant and is a legendary piece. The same also goes for butterfly and its use of enchant. It's the same effect, but you can't read the full description in like half these pieces. This is an actual replay of angels on death, all ally minions become enchants, making them immune to make later for in turn, ruins a checkmate. Because, I mean, first of all, notice that the Drake is enchanted for 1.5 turns, not even 1 turn, to screw you over as hard as possible. Enchant always has this extra turn applied to it, and it doesn't benefit you to have the extra turn because, remember, the enchant has that condition that you can't attack the enemy king. So this scam means that you lose 2 turns of being able to attack. So in this replay, the queen goes and takes this thinking, oh, it should be still defended, it was only enchanted for a turn. But no, the king just takes, and the Drake can't take back. So not only is the description lying in that it doesn't tell you that the enchanted unit can't attack king, but it's 1 turn longer than usual. This replay wasn't even the only time people got scammed by this. God, it's so dumb. It's like, especially because the can't target king condition was supposed to be used for stuff like dragon, to prevent stupid situations like that where the dragon would otherwise be completely immune. Speaking of that, though, that extra turn thing is such a scam. There even is a tactic involving thunder marking the dove. So what that does is the dove will die after 4 turns, and just look at this freaking description. Okay, yes, the angel footage spoiled you on it, but it says 2 turns. So why does it say 2.5 turns? It's even more ridiculous, because Enchantress also says 2 turns, and that, after the enemy will make their move, that piece will only have 1.5 turns. So that dove thunder trick gives you an extra turn of enchant, and it's not set anywhere. Completely broken game. 45. New keyword system. So this is not a thing that's currently in the game, but it's going to come next update, and this is going to be the solution to all the info that's being hidden in the info box. Now, we'll have all these highlighted words. For example, if you hover over status, you get this immensely helpful wall of text. Variant term referring to vector action or use with some finite queue by designing permanent modifications so the strategy teams are bonus at a value. Thanks, Spaghetti Monster. We also have this amazing teaser where you can have nested keywords. 46. Too many fonts. This game has a disgusting amount of fonts, so why not count them?
Let's play chess. Too many fonts. Chess 6 fonts everywhere.
Stratshot player, the inventor of Chess Battle Advanced, Steven says, I wouldn't use 25 fonts. 20 tops. Not recommended. zero point 0.3 hours on record. I think I remember seeing Comic Sans in here at one point, which is also true, by the way. Can you spot the Comic Sans? Okay, it's the changing number on this, which, by the way, is not a clickable element for some reason. You also gotta like how this font that's used to describe each pack is now Arial for some reason in the basic pack. One of my favorite sources of too many fonts is the left side of the screen. But not even that this row is like 4 fonts already, but that these icons are so close to each other, and yet the bottom one has a completely different font for some reason. 47. Hidden value caps. Don't you just love hidden information? Well, this unit, Pride. First of all, Queen is value 21, and so when Pride takes it, it gains half the target's value. It doesn't even say whether it rounds up or down, but it rounds down. Actually, the point of this is that this unit doesn't have a cap. And it's like, okay, that seems reasonable, right? It doesn't mention there's a cap anywhere. Well, this different unit called Fire Elemental gains value on kill, so it gains 6 value, this one. And so, when I try the same thing with this thing... Oh wow, it caps at 100, even though it says that nowhere in the description. Here's Gluttony. This thing gains 3 value on kill. And what do you know, also capped at 100 for some reason. How about the Vampire, which has your king gains 5 value in part of its on kill. Oh hey, the king isn't capped. What if we don't have a king? Nice, the Vampire's value also isn't capped. Very consistent game, Spaghetti Monster. 48, the Illusion of Playability. This unit, Illusionist, spawns a bunch of illusions into the previous locations that it goes to. And the illusion vanishes at 0 value or when targeted by an enemy. Now, how did the Spaghetti Monster program the idea of vanishing when targeted by enemy? Like, this already works in a bit of a weird spaghetti way. For example, there's pieces like Gnome that say, becomes Earth Elemental after using Petrify. So, if I use Petrify on the illusion, is that a successful Petrify or is it not? It would seem reasonable, but it does not transform into Earth Elemental. But it even says it petrifies it in the move log. Well, the answer is that the Spaghetti Monster put not equal to illusion in a bunch of random places in the code, so you just gotta remember this noodly playlist, which will sure to be biting back as technical debt later on. Speaking of illusions, have I mentioned that the red +++ upgraded pieces, the art style seriously makes it look like a red threat square. It has the red glow. This Banshee thing is almost perfectly lined up with the square. Actual aesthetic pay to win. 49, the Clown Army Profile feature. So on the army building screen, there is something that is a gigantic waste of attention, and it's this army profile thing, which is supposedly showing the attack, defense, magic, and tactics of your army. And it puts all these numbers all over the place. But just like but it's just so silly. Like, no one builds an army with these freaking numbers. They build it based on combos or archetypes. And the way it's calculated is a joke too. Like, if I put these, I only have 4 defense for some reason. If I put in these, I have 96 magic, even though this isn't a magic unit, because apparently in the old times, swapping used to be considered a magic ability, but now so many pieces have it that it's not even worth mentioning. But also, if you go in the store, you can vote on units. And there's recency bias in the votes too, so I can just decide to rate the pawn magic. Also can do it like once a day or something. So back then, people cared enough to troll and say pawn is magic and stupid stuff like that, and it would affect the fake army numbers. Truly amazing at how unbelievably generic magic and tactics are as categories, but it gets even memeier because the Spaghetti Monster has secretly done some nudging in the code. For example, if a unit doesn't have a promote, it apparently gains tactics. And there's like a massive hard-coded list of stuff in this Starlink system. I like this line though, where if you use a greed, your tactics go down by 10. I didn't even know it was possible for a unit to be untactical. Can we please collectively insult the Spaghetti Monster for spending time on this convoluted, useless feature? The Spaghetti Monster, explain yourself. And finally, curse thing number 50. All of the cheats and exploits that are still not fixed. The video I posted where a German hacker found a way to auto-win every game and blackmailed the developer is just the tip of the iceberg. Here's a list of exploits in recent memory that are just like insane they exist. The double move bug, where a player can lose connection. We don't even know if that's the reason, but In any case, players can sometimes lose their turn and give the other player 2 moves in a row. The number 1 player in the game, rating-wise, is long suspected to actually have been farming bots all day by using a cube that is inaccessible to everyone else. It is also possible to desync matches or disconnect, which people use to evade rating loss. There are notorious disconnectors in Ranked. Also, I need to re-point out this video was only about cursed interactions and visuals, and not all the other insane things, which partially overlap with exploits and those things too. Anyway, don't subscribe and don't watch the other content. Goodbye. And chess battle advanced.